I'm always a little bit worried when I do this because everything has to be changed and switched around. But listen, I'm not a professional producer, YouTube producer, so if something doesn't go right, I'm okay with that. All right, y'all. Good evening and welcome to MACMH's Community Podcast Series. We're here to inform, inspire, and support. I'm the host, Twana Anderson, the Community Engagement Director, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to tune in. Here, we invite our partners to join us for a conversation about their organization's service to the community, sharing ideas and opportunities that exist throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, all while weaving throughout concepts that will help you have an impact on a child's mental health journey. So, of course, there's a little bit of housekeeping that we need to do before we get started. We are streaming this episode live. We are live, but it will be available anytime you feel like learning something about children's mental health and the community that serves them. This is not our typical time to stream, but I'm so happy that you're here. We have the opportunity to have an international broadcast, y'all, and we could not pass that up. This has to be our first time. I hope it is. But if you enjoyed this video, please help spread the word. We sincerely appreciate your support. Also, during this episode, we may reference books, articles, other information that will support the knowledge you'll gain during our time here today. You will find those links below in the description. I make sure that I put them in there before we get started. So they're all down there along with contact information for our guests so you can stay connected. All right. So the Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health has a mission to promote and pursue optimal mental health from infancy to young adulthood. Every topic of this podcast is approached with an open and critical mind, exploring opportunities to view circumstances through a different lens. Being in this space means we advocate for all children to have equal access and opportunities to develop the skills to nourish their lives. We begin to help others remove their blinders while we are also being challenged to remove our own. We need to see other people, appreciate their perspectives, and perhaps even learn from their journeys. Engaging with community is what I do for MACMH. And this podcast is something new that we're doing to share our partners with you. We are a professional development organization. That is our jam. We provide excellent educational opportunities to providers and educators, offering continuing education online in our training series or through one of our 2 leading annual children's mental health conferences throughout the year. We also recognize the need to provide our resources in unique ways that will reach everyone. And as I said that, you may have thought to yourselves, a podcast is not a very unique way to do anything, and you are correct. But whether you are a parent or a caregiver, a relative or friend of a child or a young person who may struggle with their emotional awareness, we hope that sharing our resources with you in this way will become a valuable tool for you. On this episode, we welcome the creator and CEO and the co-founder of Gheorg, an emotional learning app for children that helps them develop resilience and manage stress. Gheorg is a friendly robot designed to help your child improve their emotional intelligence and mental well-being. When I'm out in the community, one of the questions that I'm asked the most is, what can I do as a parent to help my child manage their anxiety and stress? Most of the time, a professional isn't what a child needs. They need simple guidance, and this app is designed to do just that. All right, so enough of me. Let's bring our guests in today. All right, here we go. Now, this is all new for me because, every week I try to do something different. So let's see if I can bring them in. I'm going to show this wonderful little clip while I bring them in to the show. So let's see if it works. All right, and there y'all are. Welcome in our guests today, Dr. Louise Metcalf and Dana Klein. And I have one more thing that I'm going to do for y'all.
I love it. Thank you.
Listen, thank you. Thank you. I'm so, so, so excited to have you here. So, I'm one of those people who I ask for bios and they're all very nice. And I like to sometimes read stuff out, but I really just like people to tell me about themselves. Now, I am prepared. I can talk about you all. But I just like for you to talk about yourselves. Is that okay? Or do you want me to read what I have?
Oh, I'm okay with that. So good.
You're good with that? All
Oh,
right,
good.
awesome. First of all, I just believe that it would have been great to have this app when my children are younger, but I do know some teenagers right now that would benefit from using George on a daily basis. All right. So, Dr. Metcalf, should I call you Dr. Metcalf or is Louise okay? I always like to ask first.
Yeah, call me Louise. That's okay. All good.
All
Yeah.
right. Great, great, great. Well, listen, tell us a little bit about, your background and your journey to where you are.
Yeah, so I'm a psychologist here in Australia. I've been a psychologist for 30 years. It's rapidly becoming over 30 years, which is a little distressing. But as a result, I've seen a lot. I'm a senior psych, and I grow other psychologists as well now. And I built George because I discovered when I had my own child, just how much people were out in the community worrying about childhood anxiety and experiencing childhood anxiety and having nothing that could help them. So I decided to build George. As a psychologist, I'd noticed that anxiety was rising for children, but I admit that I worked in the middle of a major city here in Australia, and we just thought it was the private schools, which is terrible. They can be quite focused on results, a little bit too focused, and we just assume that. But when I took my child to daycare, I live in the mountains, not in the city, and that's when I discovered it was there as well, and that really scared me. So I looked into the rates, and I realized that we psychologists would never be able to help the number of children that I experienced it at that point. And certainly that's just kept rising. So that's very much the case now. So yeah, I invented George.
Absolutely, especially, one of the things that we don't talk about a lot during the course of my conversations is the effect that COVID has had on our children's mental health, or should I say the pandemic, because it was the pandemic that had the effect, not necessarily COVID.
Yeah, the virus. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Only because I have a friend who's been affected by COVID specifically.
Yeah.
To make sure I say that differently. And so one of the things that I did read about you, though, Louise, and you kind of skimmed over your credentials, but I do want you to talk a little bit more about them, because I want to make sure that when people tune into this episode and they hear and listen to it, they understand how immensely qualified you are to do this work, first of all, and then to create this app. So just, not, to toot your own horn or anything, but be a little bit more specific about your credentials if you could.
Yeah, sure. So, it's quite an extensive program of education here in Australia to even become a psychologist. You do above a master's level, you kind of do supervision as well. So I had to do all of that. But then I really expanded my career by going into as many different types of mental health services as I could. As an early career psychologist, I learned a great deal. And that led me to quite an extensive set of sort of qualifications and also experiences in my professional life, which then led me to consulting. So I actually consulted here in the Asia Pacific, right across in many different countries. It was such a challenging experience, a little too much flying. But it was great. We helped a lot of people to think more about how to build healthy environments for workers, but also for families and in countries. So that was quite a good thing. I've also worked with UNICEF and with the United Nations, trying to help communities understand and governments understand the importance of particularly green space for mental health in cities. Right around the world. So yeah, I've done a lot, and also a PhD as well, focusing on change and like how humans change, even for very, very difficult things that they struggle with. So yeah, I've done a lot. It's true. I've also done some things in the US, which are quite fun. Courses that you couldn't do in Australia at the time. So
Okay.
yeah, a lot.
Oh, listen, I can't wait to just talk a little bit about the nuances between our countries and mental health and the approach to public health and all that. We'll get into that a little bit later. But I want to give you, Dana, who fastly became one of my favorite people, to give you an opportunity
My
to introduce yourself. Like you, Dana, you are highly, immensely qualified to do the work that you're doing with George. So please tell us about your background and how you ended up here.
Well, I've spent pretty much my whole life in sales and marketing and go-to-market strategies, building partnerships for long-term growth and value, and just creating, new market development. And what I mean by that, it's slightly different than business development. It's really building the audience, the actual market itself, and building the hype, and then going in for the kill, so to speak. So, but I had done a lot of things for as a job, and that was really money based, profit based, and things like that. And it's very rare when you come across something that actually is mission based, that really, and as you put it earlier, Tawana, one of your missions is to have equal access. And when I met Louise, and she was telling me, 1 in 2, UNICEF says 1 in 2 children suffer from anxiety and depression. Most go undiagnosed and untreated due to accessibility and costs. Yeah. And that she was tired of watching kids 4 and 5 anxious and depressed and starting to commit suicide by 7 and 8. And she wanted to, she built the tool that actually cradles the child. And I said, stop, you had me at hello. I love it. I love it. This mission, it's a bigger mission than most people realize, because when you save a child, you save the future. You may have heard that before, but really, it really is in this case, because all these children are going to be adults and parents. And the cycle will continue. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It will continue. So, with a tool and mission like this, it's really hard not to get involved and to, see what I could bring to the table in terms of my background. And as you know, it's pretty varied. I worked across many different industries, and I take a real bird's eye view of the market, and trying to find the place where maybe others don't look, and others aren't as visible. But what is really great with George is it really doesn't have a real competitor. So it's very unique because it's very preventative, inclusive, accessible, really bonds with the child, while creating real-time connection with everything that makes it child-centric. So whether it's the parent, the caregiver, the educator, it's really child-centric, which is really a whole different avenue. So for me, it's an honor and a pleasure to bring what I have to the table, and the years and market experience, and a few accolades. So, just I've been leveraging. You bet I've been leveraging it to help. And what I found in the market actually also surprised me, because everybody that I spoke to could attest to seeing it or being a part of it, and with it, or being some way connected to a child that was suffering. So this changed. This is very important work.
Absolutely. I did some extensive research just trying to find something that was comparable to this, and I could not. One of the things that I feel like I've noticed is that our approach to helping our children is just telling them to do what we do. So I see a lot of, mindfulness and, let's create this corner. And I'm sure all of those are really great tools. But to me, it just feels like we're taking an adult approach to our children's well-being. And so I want to jump right in. Let's get down to the business that everyone needs to know, Louise. How does Gheorg work, and why does it work?
Well, Gheorg is in many ways very simple because he is what kids want, and they just want someone to talk to. So he's that, and he can be a she as well. So it's George and Georgie, but we had to pick one,
Yes.
And yeah, he's like, he and she are totally changeable. They can, make them into any sort of look they want to kind of suit who they want to talk to. They can swap between the two if they want, and he just really is who they want to talk to, and he just delivers really good advice and everything according to guidelines. And yeah, he's just a loving, kind little character that they can talk to. Yeah, that's how he works.
Yes, I agree. But how did you come up with kind of the idea? And I know we touched on this a little bit when you were for your introduction, but I want to know exactly, because I know you've done a lot of scientific research. You reached out to parents, you've made sure you've had feedback loops. And so I've done all that research and I know the work that you've put into this. So tell everyone exactly the painstakingly process it took you to create this. And then how did you get to this solution, understanding children's mental health and psychology the way that you do?
Yeah, see, a lot of these solutions are built from the psychologist's perspective or the psychological researcher's perspective, even worse. And they tend to be very correct, but not very engaging. And it's something that I had in my mind when I started tackling this problem. How do we do this in a way that is actually engaging and not just, a kind of a mental health thing? So we designed with over 1,000 children now. And we actually go into schools to do that, and they are fabulously honest. So the first thing we took in was a whole bunch of designs of like, who would you talk to, and a whole bunch of questions, and they landed on this little character, and they drew him. So he's drawn by kids, and we did sort of take those drawings and make them a little bit more design looking, but he's drawn by children.
I know, I love him.
It's so good. It's so good. And we took the initial exercises again, the practicing psychologist exercises into kids in schools. And they very quite rightly told us these were boring and no good. So they designed those as well. And that's what we continuously do. Anything that we're doing which is new, even a translation, we take those into kids who, like, for example, a translation, kids who speak the language, and we ask them, does this work for you? Is this sort of the person you want to talk to? Is this the character you want to talk to? And they quite often say, this bit is wrong. You need to change this, and this is uncool. And yeah. So quite an extensive process. All that research really poured into a very thorough design process. We also talked to, and still talk to, parents. I think we're up to our 600th parent now. We've sort of lost count with parents. There is a terrible, terrible set of stories that we've found out there. There's lots of stories of, kids needing help with anxiety for school and things like that, which is great. But then you do hear some real horror stories. And it does make me feel like we should have built Gheorg 10 years ago. We couldn't have, but it does make me feel that way. And we're really trying to tackle that. In one story I heard, there was someone who'd spent tens of thousands of dollars on trying to help their child with anxiety. None of those things worked. In fact, one of those interventions was just terrible, absolutely terrible. And that shouldn't be. You shouldn't have to spend incredible amounts of money to help your child with anxiety. The tools are out there. They're very translatable. I think the problem is we just haven't actually gone through that design process for children before. We've done a lot for adults, and that's great, but children have sort of been left aside, like they were too hard, and that's not okay. It's not okay that you have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to help your child.
No, not at all. Especially when there are tools that we as adults can first of all learn our own selves. I feel like the reason why we don't have better emotionally regulated children is because the adults in their lives are not better emotionally regulated. We have this department here, our infant and early childhood mental health division, that do you have that sort of a field there, Louise, where you focus on infants?
Yes, we do. Yeah. Here we have things like sort of early childhood nurses,
Okay.
and they tend to help at the early stage, but they can't do everything, and in fact they're quite limited, so they can't cover off on everything, and they tend to do the basics like diet and the weight of the baby and things like that, but they struggle with how to help parents parenting a bit better because they just simply don't have the time. And if you think about it, we didn't know as much about how to parent for generations before. My parents, for example, wouldn't have read like many parenting books. They might have read Dr. Spock, and that was about it.
Yes.
But these days there's a lot more, and technology like Gheorg can actually pull that information in and refine it a bit to what is actually useful to you. So yeah, like being able to access it is a very new thing, and
Yes.
getting into the hands of parents in accessible ways is very much part of our goal.
So Dana, I want to ask this question of you. Because there were a couple of comments as we were doing our marketing for Gheorg. There was a couple of comments that asked the question about why would you design an app for children for children's mental health when parents are trying to get them off of their screens? And I thought, all right, I'm going to take that question and I'm gonna ask you all about that. I have my own opinions because listen, this is a new age. Children have these devices. Why not give them something that they can actually use that's going to be a positive influence? But Dana, what's your answer to that?
Well, I know Louise is going to have some comments on this as well. But two things that are really important to know about Gheorg. First, Gheorg is designed that there's a limit. We try and get kids off within 10 minutes. They can use Gheorg when they need. It is not a crutch; it's a tool. So when they need some support, they come on and they get what they need, and then they go back into reality. That's the whole point, is to get them into reality. The second part of this is that the more time they spend on apps like Gheorg, the less they're on the bad apps. But more importantly, they understand the messaging, what makes them feel good and what makes them feel bad, and to stay with the good stuff and to stay in real life. And with that, I know Louise has got some comments on this for sure. So I'm going to turn it back over to her.
Yeah, it's so true. We try to think of Gheorg more like a vitamin that you kind of take and it empowers you and off you go and you can charge through your day kind of thing. But he was originally a hardware robot. So we originally built something off the screen. And then I was very politely told here in Australia that no one was going to give a psychologist money to build a robot. But clearly it didn't stop me.
Clearly.
Nothing stops Louise.
So. I just thought I can't build his body right now, but I can build his brain. So that's where we're at. But we do have plans for Gheorg to kind of even sit slightly above the device. So that might sound a bit strange, but it's just in case children might access information through their devices that parents might not want them to see, which is actually distressing. Well, they might get a message from a friend, which might seem sort of fine, but then they take it in a very distressing manner, right? So we're looking for a way to actually kind of sit George a little bit above so that he can actually, catch children even a little bit earlier.
Okay.
So we're working on it.
That's awesome. I can't remember if I heard anyone specifically talk about the age range that this is good for. And Dana, you can answer this because I know you and I had a conversation. What are the age ranges that this that your app has been created for? And then how specifically do the parents, the child, and the provider work within this app together? And you could both can talk about that question too.
Well, the app is designed for 7 to 12, and we're finding people younger and older are using it. Younger when they're literate, so if they're literate at 5, they can hop on. But when people enjoy it, they can stay on George for many years, by the way, because the machine learning just adapts and becomes more sophisticated the more time their George and the youth are in conversation. So that gets more and more customized, more and more sophisticated. And then as kids age 2, as you might know, that they may be getting older, but maybe their emotional intelligence is still kind of stuck. So they may enjoy using George further. So and the other question was, tell me.
It's just how do parents?
Oh, how the ecosystem works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So the app has a parent portal, and so the parents will log in and then turn it over to the child. The caregiver, educator, anybody else, social services that might be involved, they have a dashboard, but it's, everybody has to agree that they'll be in the loop. And I'm sure, Louise, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the unique things that George does, I mean, there's lots of apps out there for calming children or emotional regulation, basically, right? And they're not bad. But the problem that most parents and psychologists, I have to say, practitioners in this space face, is that there's not a lot of coordination with how people manage things. So if you take school anxiety in particular, you can see how that's something that pops up at home. So you'll get sort of incidents of panic at home, and you will get that at school. And if your child is seeing a practitioner like me, they will talk about it with me. Now, all those environments, if they coordinate together, we can get progress for children so much faster. And anxiety untreated of any kind, forget school anxiety, any anxiety impacts children at school. It impacts their learning. And so the faster that we can actually get kids progressing through treatment with anxiety, and coordinated treatment makes that faster, then the less impacts they have on their developing brain. So the better learning they have, the better social life they have. They have less complications with friendships. You get less blow-ups at home. So relationships with family are better. There's so many benefits to actually coordinating care. And I think of it like a little nest, really. It's just a little nest where everyone is helping to kind of, scaffold really around the child so that they can grow and get stronger, and then, they won't need the scaffold. The truth is George is built so that kids will use him like a vitamin, and when they don't need him, they can actually still just use the activities, like use the learning, but they don't necessarily need to be on George. What we find is that kids still love George, but we do know that they still do use the exercises without him, so it's good.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and that being connected, if there's anything off about the child or any kind of, words that are of concern or, whatever just is not right, there's a real-time alarm. So there's real-time progress being monitored and real-time alarms. And again, like to Louise's point, it's a nest. And so it grows at the child's speed, but also keeps them in check.
Yeah, I've ascribed to that philosophy that it takes a village to raise a child. And unfortunately, just in some areas of the world, like in ourselves, in our communities, we're not great at navigating what that community looks like. And so
Right.
George kind of fills those gaps and makes that community around a child with mental health issues function much better.
Awesome. And since I've been in this position, I'm learning more and more about the words to use to describe children's mental health. And you used one that I've learned, Louise, and that's scaffolding. And you mentioned that. Let's take just a moment to be a little bit more specific about what that terminology means to just a regular parent who has been told for some reason that the more I leave my kid alone, the stronger they are. So let's talk about scaffolding.
And look, no guilt for them really, because even in Australia, only about 30 years ago, I think the health department was sending around booklets around, how to make your child stronger, which mentioned things like that. So, as I said, we've come a long way in understanding parenting. But scaffolding is very much like how you see scaffolding on a building. Like you put it around the building so that you can build on the inside to create this amazing building that no longer needs that scaffolding, and you just take it down. So it's very, very similar in mental health. And scaffolding for a child with mental health issues can have various forms, but for anxiety in particular, it's things like helping them to regulate when they're around the thing or experiencing the thing that gives them anxiety. And you're part of the scaffolding as a parent. So yeah, leaving them alone. Nope. Nowadays we don't do that.
and I always have to make sure that I point out that most of the time when I'm saying these comments, it's about me, right? Because my kid, my son is getting married next month. That's how old my children are. And so thank you. But I feel like there are a lot of adults who are like me who, when they had their children, had no idea what it meant to support them emotionally in that way. My children were not allowed to have an attitude. People who are going to watch this podcast are going to hear me say that a lot. Like, my kids just were not allowed. You don't have a job. You don't have to pay rent. I don't understand why you have an attitude. And so I know that I missed some valuable instruction, time, growth opportunities with my children. And so now in my position, what I want to do is just let everybody know it's never too early to learn. Please learn early, because if we know better, we can do better with our children. So I just know that I'm going to be the perfect grandma.
Absolutely.
So
it's so true. It's so true. And even that capacity to kind of say, this is something that a lot of parents don't realize because it wasn't role modeled to us. Is even that capacity to say, I'm sorry, I got that wrong, I messed up, is role modeling how to say sorry to your child. So when you do that, it actually has incredible amounts of benefits for them, right? Because they learn that it's okay to say sorry. It's okay to say, it's okay to recognize you messed up and take accountability, and then to take the appropriate action to fix it, right? So you're actually showing them how to have great relationships with people, even being a fallible human like we all are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just take a moment to let everyone who's listening that this is a Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health podcast. We're leading with knowledge, compassion, and support. Please take a moment to follow our channel, subscribe, turn on notifications for future episodes like this one that you didn't know we were going to have. So if you had on the notifications, you'd know that we were going to be here today. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the future of Gheorg, Louise, and Dana. What are your hopes? What is it that you're hoping to see
well,
out of this whole experiment? I'm calling it experiment, but it's not.
Well, one of the things that we hope is to provide Gheorg a version that is free to all children, so no child is left behind. So that's one of the things that we're striving to do. And then the second thing is to develop the app even further, so it becomes more sophisticated with deeper learning in many different ways. And I know I'll let Louise speak to that. But I think the idea is, George could really set the standard and sort of take the lead in the preventative measures for youth. And I think that's really key. I know that, everybody's worried about the teens, and you've got the younger version, but there's this group that is so important in the development. By the time they become teens, it's almost too late. So it's not that we can't treat teens, and certainly we've had huge demand that we make a George for teens as well, and we're working on that. But it's that preventative. Let's not get there to begin with. So I'll let Louise fill in the other awesome parts.
Yeah, we're doing something that no one's ever done before. So it is truly extraordinary. We're aiming to build the very, very first high performance mental health system for children. And what that means is we're not just helping kids after they get unwell, we're actually stopping kids from getting unwell as fast as possible. So we're trying to really, catch kids at the very, very earliest point possible. And that way we can just give them, shorter exercises, even less time on George, to actually boost them back into mental health. That'll be a different looking George, but it will be very much doing the same thing, just in different ways. And we have a very strong mission to build the world's first completely mentally well generation. And that would be amazing, absolutely amazing. And we need those kids so bad, because kids who are able to keep themselves mentally well with a little help from George will be able to tackle any problem. Climate change, for example, walk in the park, so we really do need those kids. We need a mentally well generation to tackle some of the big problems that we are facing in the world. So that's our mission, is to do that and to really catch kids at the earliest point, which is high performance mental health. We've never been able to do that in mental health before. Yeah. Only with the technologies that we've got now is that possible. And I look around and I see people building, the next another taxi company, and I think, oh my gosh, no, we need people to be building this.
Absolutely. And
yeah,
yes.
And when you talk about generation, and making a generation well, the other thing is that George itself is generational. So very much like Sesame Street, generations have grown up on Sesame Street. And we see George as another, the new age version of something similar along those lines, but for mental health.
Yeah. Imagine you're using Instagram as an adult. We know that the terrible effects of Instagram, they've been pretty well publicized. And you're using Instagram and you're starting to feel yourself not feeling so great. If George can catch you a little bit earlier and kind of go, hey, I've noticed something, you're starting to not feel great. You can reflect and go, gosh, yeah, you're right, I am not feeling great. And, it can help you to put it down, walk away. You don't need to follow the addictive pathway here and sort of keep going. So you can take that addiction level off for you, and then you can go and do something you really want to do, which makes you feel great. What a much better day that is.
What a much better day. And then you can go outside, as long as we are paying attention to climate change. We'll still be able to go outside, hopefully, when we put our devices down.
The George kids will solve it. Don't worry, they'll solve it.
I'm so excited. Listen, I have goosebumps. I'm so very happy that MACMH was presented with this opportunity. I listen, I just know my boss sends me stuff. He's like, hey, take a look at this. Take a look. What do you think about this? But this one, he looked at himself, and he got involved with this himself. And so I knew that it had to be really great. So we've talked a lot about George, what it is that inspired you to create this wonderful app, how our children can use it and benefit from it, how parents and providers and practitioners can stay involved in and still support them on their journey. But one thing that I have been trying to figure out is the difference between how our mental health and public health systems work. So this is just me geeking out here for a minute, Louise, please, because another one of the things that I'm learning about here, and that is something our executive director Brandon Jones wants to do, is figure out how we can create a movement to have children's mental health in general, move from the medical model that it is, and take a public health approach to mental health, because that's going to be the biggest difference. It seems to me the biggest difference between how we can help all of our children and not just the ones who are diagnosed because clinicians need to figure out how to get paid. So how do y'all do it there? Is mental health public health? Do you have some deep pockets that's helping you do all of this work? Like, how is it that you're able to take this passion and turn it into reality and plan for something so much bigger?
Oh, you know what? I've been rabbiting on about preventative mental health since my days in university. So people are kind of sick of me talking about it, but we've never really been able to do it. Like here in Australia, we psychologists very much are not very keen on the medical model, like just thinking about children as, you know, someone you treat, or, you know, a patient you treat and out the door, and, you know, forget about them. We've never been that keen on that model, but it is definitely how the system here is funded, unfortunately, which I believe is, you know, also true in the US.
Yes,
so that's why what we're doing is so radical. It's very, very radical. And that's why engagement is so important, because we need families to kind of drive this. You know, we are hoping to get some of the you know, more political players in the US and here in Australia on board to kind of understand how what we do contributes to education, also to online safety, you know, a whole ream of things that are massive problems right now. But it is a bit of a slow journey, because we're so used to seeing mental health as, oh, well, you're sick, here's a treatment, then you're out the door. And it just doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. Mental health is a lifetime thing. And there are always things around us that are trying to mess with us, you know. So, and these days they're quite insidious. I had someone say to me recently that, oh, I don't worry about social media. It's exactly the same as TV, and I'm fine. I grew up with TV. Yeah, right. But it's not. It's actually very different.
Yes.
If you take that example, you know, we watch TV, and the TVs were not smart, right? So that was full stop. You would get advertising. That's about it.
Yeah.
But with these smart devices, you know, we watch whatever it is, and it watches us. And that's an entirely different scenario. And you don't have everybody in that scenario focusing on mental health. In fact, there's lots been whistleblowers, you know, people saying this is how bad we've discovered it is for mental health. So the intentions for some of these sort of watchers of us are not as you know, healthy as you know, as they could be, as they should be, really.
Yeah. That is
So
a great way of looking at that. Sorry, go ahead, Dana.
Well, it's also going to, you know, and the accessibility of you know, being out into the public. We are, you know, available online, and I'm sure you're going to share the link, but you don't need a prescription. We look at this as it's not a hidden fact anymore. It's where you're going to get your it's what's going to make you well. So we, you know, again, getting into that, you know, accessibility, it's less than a streaming service, so less than a Netflix. And it's readily available now, and you don't need a prescription. You just need to know that you need some help somewhere. You need a tool.
Yes. A very valuable tool.
Mhm.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, listen, we've covered a lot in this short time that we've been together, but you all do this very well, very concise and and fun to
You
talk
love what we
to.
do.
We try.
Awesome. So as we, get ready to wrap things up, I want you both to tell me what is the best part about what you do? And then maybe what's the most frustrating or challenging thing about what you do? Dana, let's start with you.
Okay. The best part is seeing the people's reaction that it's they, how soon can we get it? So, and they can get it now, but just, that we fill a need. They validate every day that this is exactly what's needed. It's the whole, in the whole system, saving also healthcare costs, proving efficacy of other programs. And it's just got layers and layers of benefits. The disappointing part is in some cases there's either politics or there's some block, some kind of block. Maybe they need different kinds of data. We don't we are HIPAA compliant and very private and confidential about everything with this app. So unless they go through a program that we're involved with, we're not tracking anybody. Again, not like the social media. So so when people ask us for ridiculous data, this is very frustrating, because now everybody, is pre-programmed on the data when they should be, again, child-centric. And,
Yes.
this is where, again, pounding home the message.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I think for me, it's, I get frustrated in the, very similar to Dana, it's the barriers we face to bring this to all children. There are incredible amounts of barriers. We break one every day, but there's always seems to be a gazillion more. But the best part is seeing, kids building Gheorg is pretty awesome. But seeing the results from Gheorg it's just amazing. Parents who say they'd given up, absolutely given up with, they'd read the books, but they couldn't figure out how to make the exercises function, or, they just couldn't translate it into what was happening for them. And then they write me a little email going, I have to tell you something.
I love it.
It's just awesome. It really is.
I love it. I love it. Ever since I've been in service to children, which has probably been about 10 years almost now. I came from the world of food insecurity, and now I'm here in mental health, and recognizing that everything starts there. Everything starts there and ends there. Whether they're going to school because they're hungry, they're not able to pay attention, but the teacher is not recognizing that, and they get frustrated because of the child. It's like, what, if you just give them a banana, they'll probably be the best child for you all day. And so just being able to have this and be able to share that it's here. We're going to be at the fair on Monday, which is really why I was trying to get y'all in here. Because we'll be at the fair. We've got more of our wonderful little bookmarks that people can take with them. I always have to ask people, do you read real books? Because, if you don't read real books, the bookmark's not going to do you any good. But I'm so excited. We're taking a tablet out there. We're going to make sure that people can get on and actually see and test Gheorg, because there's a free trial. So I'm excited to be at the fair on Monday and to take Gheorg with us. So thank you again.
Pleasure. Thank you. It's been great talking to you.
Listen, so I want to just say thank you again to our guest today, Dr. Louise Metcalf, Dana Klein. You've been both troopers. Thank you. I guess, Louise, it's actually daytime for you. It's really me and Dana that are struggling to finish this hour, right?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I really appreciate you doing this for me.
It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk about Gheorg.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you for sharing, George, this wonderful new app that's going to help empower children to take control of their own mental health journey. I know that there are just bigger and better things coming. I am excited that we will continue to be partners with you because this is an amazing opportunity for parents to really find a solution that's going to help their children. So thank you, thank you, thank you again. If you don't mind to just stay here in the room for a couple minutes, let me say my goodbyes or say, wrap it up here, and then we'll come back and say goodbyes. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right, then hold on right there for me. I'm going to take you out real quick. All right, you guys, I really hope that you enjoyed this conversation. George is an amazing app, and I hope you were able to get a positive feeling about how this app can help your child, any child, become more aware of their emotions when they're in the moment, identify what they're feeling, actually put words to them, and then learn practical ways to move through those moments that sometimes make life a little uneasy for our children. Remember, you can take advantage of the free trial by visiting their app through our personalized page. It will be in the description. It's not yet, but we do have a page that will link you directly to George. You can try it for free. I encourage you to do that. I had the website up for a little bit. I like to show websites because that's where we get all of our information and give you a little tease. So visit their website, try the app with your child, come and visit us at the fair on Monday. You'll be able to try it there with us as well. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you. There haven't been very many shows in August, but we have some great things coming in September. So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe, get those notifications turned on. We're on we're MACMH.org or MACMH everywhere. You are in social media. So please do us a favor and follow us. Thank you very much. We really, really appreciate you being here. Have a great evening.